right? The time has come, I believe. And honestly, this may as well be day one of starting to peel down gradually. But we'll just keep it simple and say this is the bulk finale, right? This is the ender. This is peak form of this off season, which I am feeling pretty good about. Last year, around about October-ish, more like a mid-ish September. That was when I finished, and I think my peak weight on like an extra heavy day was like 270, but I was substantially softer, honestly probably more than 5 pounds softer than I am now, waking up empty stomach at a 265. So that feels all right with me. Plus, usually, and it's not exactly a time frame sort of situation. It's more so, it's like, all right, is there any more substantial size I'm gonna be able to put on by slamming food? This 5-month mark, that's about right. So now what's gonna change? Right? What am I gonna do differently? There's a few phases that are gonna occur over these next few weeks. Phase 1, glycogen depletion. So if you ever talk about guys, if you ever hear someone come into the gym and say, "Oh, dude, I'm so flat today," they're saying they're small, but what it really means is I'm not eating a ton of food right now, so all of my muscle storage cells that hold a little bit of blood sugar and glycogen that keeps you kind of big and full and carved up, those are going to start to flatten out. And that sucks about a diet for anyone, especially if you're at a relatively low-ish body fat percentage to start, like sub 20, because what that means is for the first 2 weeks, you actually kind of get nerfed a little bit, right? Your physique actually goes down in quality just a touch if you're looking at it objectively as like, muscle size versus lean or soft fat tissue, right? Because your muscle themselves are going to start to kind of deflate a little bit. It's not as though you're losing muscle. That's a bit of a misconception. It actually takes a while to atrophy. It's not just an overnight kind of thing. But your muscles are very spongy that they can suck up and kind of flatten out a lot of fluids in a pretty quick amount of time, right? I mean, if you ever watched like UFC fighters when they have to do like 20-pound water cuts, I mean, it's totally dangerous how much they're doing, but there's a lot of water in you that kind of flows in and out. You know what I'm saying? So after probably about 2 weeks or so, actually definitely within 2 weeks, I'll finish kind of a weight drop a bit quicker than normal pace. And that is not any fat being burned. At least no substantial fat yet, So I'd say next week, by chilling out calorie-wise, I'm probably going to be walking around more like a 260, maybe even a 257 or so, something along those lines. And that's about the 7-ish, 6-pound difference between me being pretty carved up and full versus a little bit more carb depleted. And those carbs always have water attached, so that's why it's such a big differential. So once I get down from my peak walking around weight 265 to 257, 250 something ish, somewhere kind of around that range, that's when I'll start to steadily lose weight, because I'll just be in more of a consistent deficit. And the only weight that's going to come off isn't going to be intramuscular carbs, because I'm just going to be maintained at like kind of a lower filled state. If every day you went to the gas station and you filled yourself up to the top, well, every day your gas tank's going to be full. But for me, every day I'm going to be kind of filling it more so to like half, maybe even a quarter. 200 grams of carbs is very different than 500, 600, And once I get into that state, then I just wait. And it should be 1 pound, 2 pounds a week or so. Actually, no, probably not 2 a week. That might be a little wild. Definitely more than 1, probably less than 2 of body fat per week, which is just about, actually, what is that? It gets a little tricky to calculate, because then, you're talking, okay, how much energy am I burning with cardio, and how much of a deficit am I gonna, I'm not looking at it so technically like that. I can understand the logic where guys are gonna say, okay, if I eat 2,400 calories, and I do 30 minutes of cardio, that means that 300 calories just got removed. And like, I think that if you want to get that analytical about it, you can. For me, I've just never seen the point. So my thing is, I've got a couple of rules dieting wise that I stick to. Bulking, you can kind of back and forth it a little bit. Your main thing is just getting enough food in to grow. But dieting wise, I do have my own kind of method, and it's nothing complicated in terms of macros. So how many pounds do you weigh? Right, for me, 260 something, I'll just round down to 250, right? 250 grams of protein, that's a good number. So starting off this dieting phase, protein, 250 grams a day. Fats, I don't really need a ton of fats, and honestly, I kind of want to eat more carbs just so I've got, carbs to actually run off of. So I usually cut my fat intake by about a third of whatever my protein intake is going to be. So if I'm eating 250 grams of protein, I don't want fats to exceed much more than 80 grams a day. And I'll even lower that, as time goes on. But just as a start, that's a good number. So 250 grams of protein, 80-ish grams of fats, and then carbs to taste. So what does that add up to? 80 grams of fats is 720 calories. 250 grams of protein is 1,000. So that means from protein and fats, that's putting me at 1,720 calories. I need to eat a little bit more than that. So carbs, shit. I've got room for about 250. Yeah, probably about 250, because that'll put me at 2,700 calories a day starting. That's not a massive drop off. This bulk, I actually didn't have to eat a ton to get to this size. I was really kind of bouncing around more like an upper 3,000 calories, not even getting into like consistent fives like before. And I think half of that, not even half, most of the reason for that is the fact that I didn't just jump the gun and start grubbing on a crazy amount of food for no reason and then getting myself, fatter than necessary. But I might I'll bounce around. I'll find a good middle ground starting point. So I'll probably up my carbs a little bit, if anything. And then just make sure I stick to it, break up my food into however many meals or just snacks or like smaller portions. Don't exceed those limits. And then I just have to watch the scale. That's really the tell-all, including, how you look in the mirror, of if your diet is actually working and if you're doing anything, So let's say I think I'm doing all this awesome dieting and tracking, and then the scale says I'm 260 in 3 months. Well, clearly what I've been doing hasn't been freaking working. But if the scale does show gradual declines, then I'm good. What that tells me is everything I'm doing is working. Let's keep going. So, guys will talk about tapering down their calories, or, I guess I don't know what the classic phrase would be for that. But the longer you diet, the harder you have to diet, typically, because your body's metabolism is going to want to match however much food it's got available. So if you want to keep losing body fat, you're going to have to keep cutting that calorie intake down. And my cue for that is typically, I kind of pre-initiate a calorie drop just when I know that I'm starting to slow down weight-wise. But let's say I lost a pound a week and I ate 2,700 calories that week, right? So that means 2,700 a day equals a pound a week loss. So I'll do that again the next week. Let's say it was another pound. Let's do it again the next week. Let's say it was another pound. Let's do it the next week, only half a pound. And this is assuming that I didn't cheat or like miss meals or anything. I really did eat that much. So if I only lost half a pound eating the same amount of food, I'm going to have to drop calories by a touch. And usually that just means taking 50 grams of carbs off. So for me to go from 250 to 200, that's another 200 calorie deficit for the day. I'm good, right? And then keep kind of going lower like that. And I'm going to try to do a whole like kind of whiteboard style thing to kind of explain that a little bit better. But I think we all get the gist of what it's like, half of it isn't even like, okay, how do I diet? It's like, no, how, the question of how do I, it's really, okay, how do I make it easy though? Dude, Sam, I want to get lean, but, or I want to bulk up. What's the trick? Right? And, somebody asking that might not actually want to hear, like, it's going to be hard, just eat more food, or it's going to be tricky, you're going to have to eat less food. When people ask for the trick, they really just want to hear, it's like, okay, what's like the Shaolin pressure point that I can hit every time I have a craving, and then I don't eat anything else, and I'm good, and I just burn body fat like magic. Right? That's what people usually want to hear when they ask, dude, what's the secret? And anybody that's actually lost a ton of weight, they know that that's total freaking BS. Right? I mean, I've gotten to see hundreds of guys like that where they'll show me before and after picture at these expos or just at gyms that I go to, even like my local gyms that I've been to forever. And it's just, dude, Sam, check this out. The guy shows me a picture of someone completely different than him. And he's like, yeah, I know, that was me 2 years ago, or that was me a year ago, or that was me whatever. And to those guys, I actually get to kind of like light up a little bit, because I know that they know what they're doing. I know that they were doing cardio. I know that they had to actually limit their calorie intake and exercise restraint on their hunger, because that's the only way you're going to lose that body fat. It's you've got internal energy stores and you've got external energy inputs, right? You're either eating food or you're running off the energy you've got inside you already. So you're either plugging in your phone to the battery and the percentage is going up, or, right, you're batteryless, your percentage is going down, because you're not getting energy from an external source. And honestly, I think anything that tries to, or anyone that tries to explain that in a more roundabout, detailed kind of like, buy my book sort of way, I'm not saying that there aren't good training programs out there, but it's definitely something that is prone to sleaziness, because if you make your program sound extra flashy or extra whatever, I can see the appeal. You know what I'm saying? But for me, I've never really seen any need for anything beyond that. Make sure I do my cardio. I mean, it's the fucking basics. You could ask a 6-year-old kid how to get in shape. He'd probably say, just exercise and eat less food. Right? Or eat healthy food and take your vitamins and eat your vegetables and drink your milk, like basic shit like that. So I think it's something that is just unfortunately a little tricky, But if you can do it and you can actually get down, then for one, in more of a context of like you want to get into good shape, well then you could have a pretty freaking drastic lifestyle change. I'm talking, you got to throw out all your clothes because they're not going to fit you anymore, and you're going to get to be able to do all sorts of stuff that you weren't able to do maybe 100 pounds heavier or 150 pounds heavier or wherever you may be at, and there's hundreds of guys that have done it, documented their whole process. Like if that's your kind of journey, you got to watch some of these guys, because it's going to be way more motivational and hyping up to see somebody really go through what you're trying to go through. But in more of a lower body fat, bulking, cutting kind of perspective, like more casual lifters, remember, not casual, but like consistent lifters, dude, I can't even well, I guess I could imagine, but I want to see what I did. Like I've even gone through good dieting phases back when I was like 170, like 180, just to actually see how I was looking pretty lean. And if you never do, I really think you're missing out. Right? Find your buddy who has well, I guess that's more of a step 2 later. But if you get into really good shape at least once, and you get some cool pictures taken, like have your buddy who's got a real camera, borrow it or something. Like that's just cool to freaking look back on. Like I know for a fact, however far down the future, I'm going to compile all sorts of cool shots that I've got from like kind of this era, or whenever I do my next bodybuilding shows and things like that, and I'm going to look back at it very fondly. But that's also just because that's like my thing. As much as I'm like, okay, yeah, lifting, calories, everything, I really don't think the gym needs to be like the pinnacle of everyone's life. I think it should be involved in everybody's life, but it doesn't have to be your main thing. So if your main thing is like your dad owns a paint shop and you're getting ready to take it over, and you're doing real custom crazy ass paint jobs, and that's your thing, and that's what you're really passionate about, well, then put your energy into that, right? But don't neglect getting a pump now and again just to make sure you're still kind of spry and loose. But yeah, I think nothing else to say there. Now begins the journey of seeing just how I'm gonna look lean. So actually, I guess one more note. I'm getting I'm a bit extra excited for competition later on down the year, because actually early on next year, because the plan's to do the Arnold, and this is the Arnold Pro. I'm not going to make this like Road to Pro Day 1 or Road to Pro debut. It's so far in the future. But what I'm excited about is I'm not going to have to suck down and peel off so much water this time. I mean, a lot of guys, they have to like carb up the whole week into a bodybuilding show so that they can, really be extra full. But for me, for these last amateur shows, I had to do like a full day fast the day before, totally dry out. I'm talking like, it's not ideal. Like me walking around at 217. Now that was just like for only an hour so that I could weigh in. But yeah, that was really kind of sucked down. And you know where all that water came from? Inside my muscles, man. That's supposed to make me, stay full and look crazy big. So now that I don't have to take it so far for this next dieting phase, what I really want to do is try to emulate the look that I had in Flex Lewis's gym, Dragon's Lair, the few days before the Vegas show, because that was like a fasted workout, dry, grainy, actually like pretty pumped. If I can emulate that look, maybe a little bit leaner as actually on stage, that will be really cool. But as much as I'm excited about that, I'm probably a little bit more excited about just being lean anyway. And part of it is because I'm kind of over it with this bulk. It's and not just on like a mental level, but I can tell when I've reached a point of like, all right, man, you're not growing anymore. These meals are not going down the same way they were 3 months ago. I think it's time to go back and forth, right? If I'm on the swing set of lifting, I just swung on the bulking side, and now it's time to swing back. Now it's time to see what got built up underneath. But yeah, plan for today, I guess day 1 peeling down of chest. I'm not going to look that much different than yesterday, and that's going to be a common theme. I'm not day by day, changes will not be particularly noticeable. But fast forward a month, fast forward 2 months, fast forward 3 months. Probably by 3 months should be very, or at least pretty freaky. But I think we'll just get excited about that for when it's actually then, and just make sure I'm staying on track until. But let's get in there. So I am not against a light squeezing set. I am not against the burn. But I tell you something, you're missing out if you don't have at least a few real heavy sets where you actually bring it. And I really hate the idea of the reps in reserve argument, which I'm not saying every set I ever do is to failure, right? I mean, at the end of today, I'm probably going to do some pumpish burning sets of flies, and it'll just be, to a sensation, not to complete inability to move. But with a heavy, real working set, if I left 5 reps in the tank, I'd feel like a total punk. That's for later, for a real hefty press, or just a real working set of anything. It demands a little bit more than just, ooh, that felt okay, But let's get real. I'm already sweaty just from warming up in here. Okay. Oh. Oh my gosh. One more of those. Whew. Okay. Oh. One more. Okay. Oh. Oh. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's move on. That was a good freaking couple openers, though. All right, heavy press. Let's swap it with a moderately heavy fly. So I'll do a good hold at the top of the first few, and then just make sure I burn out as hard as possible. One more. Whew. Yeah. Okay. Let's do another press of some kind. Definitely getting close to the end now. So I think let's do a set of just straight up pumpish crossbody presses. So I'm talking bent over, still pressing kind of inclined, like I'm not pressing down, kind of an out a little bit. And instead of just bumping my hands together in the middle, I'm gonna kind of go one over the other. And my shoulders will hunch a bit. I mean, there's no way to like keep them all the way back like in a good press, but I'm seriously getting all chest here. Like I've had to not do specific movements because I start getting a lot of front delt, but not here. So let's do one pumpish one or pump themed one and then decide what's next. But yeah, let's just say not too many sets, that's for sure. All right. Okay. Oh, shit. One more of those, and I think that'll be enough. Oh, let's post. Let's see how we're looking pumped up. I feel like a nutcase already. All right, I gotta make sure to stand in this exact spot so I don't lose focus. But I mean, even just like doing my own kind of flex shirt on, no visual confirmation at all. Yeah. Let's just say this lift was to my satisfaction. But let's actually get the real details. Ooh. Yeah, I keep telling myself I need to bring spare shirts, and then I never do it. All right, let's back up just a touch. There we go. All right. So what was that total? 3 or 4 sets of incline dumbbell? Either way, some good heavy ones, some solid squeezing flies, and then some squeezing kind of cable presses at the end. That all adds up to a good freaking lift in my book. Oh, okay. May as well get a back lat spread just for kicks. Oh my goodness. All right, and with that, I can say the chest is complete to a high degree of quality, at least for me. So now I get to go home, eat something, and get ready for back tomorrow. So let's get out of here. All right, yeah, pumped, feeling like a beast. Now all I gotta do is go back home. Very freaking nice. Had a good little cathartic sit in the phone while the air conditioner cools down. Playing on my phone moment. Post lift, it's very head clearing activity, and I'm getting kind of amped for snow. Kind of missing the snowy lifts where everything is just freaking whited out. Whoa. Semi almost just cut me off a little bit. But yeah, that'll be fun. That would be freaking fun. But until then, I am good. And actually, and here's one thing I was not crazy happy about during the last, actual prep. And this is only like the last 2 months deep. I'm not going to have to feel like I'm really dieting hard for a few months. Because in the beginning, I've got it down pretty well. Like to cut my calories steadily, not too wild. Getting extra wild, super lean, that starts to get a little trickier. But I was really hoping I'd be able to have the private gym done during those last few months of prep. It just kind of took a little bit extra long to get everything kind of set up and coordinated. Because what I would do is I'd end up going to this one kind of hole in the wall sort of private space, extra small. And I'd go late at night when they were closed, and they would turn the heat off. because I mean, why do you have to heat a building during the winter? And it would be like 60, and I'm like, single digit body fat. I'm coming in with 2 sweatshirts and shorts under my pants just so I can actually get warm. But now I'll be lucky enough to have a warmer space, which it was getting a little too warm just a month ago, like 2-ish months ago. That was kind of wild. Maybe a month and a half during that crazy freaking heat wave. I was getting a little, there was one leg day I decided to come in a sweatshirt and sweatpants. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. And I was drenched. I'm talking just heart beating extra hard. I probably would have passed out if I didn't do any cardio. But like 30 minutes a day seemed to have kicked in and gave me a little bit of a boost. And speaking of that, I had my cardio bike in the garage, but it's just kind of gross in there. It's like, it's not air conditioned, it's a little too hot, it's kind of like stuffy. So I ended up just driving to whatever gym to do my 30 minutes in the morning. Total waste of freaking time. So yesterday or 2 days ago or so, I decided to take it into the basement. So I just got it sitting right next to my desk. Sorry for the yawns, but I'm feeling it after that freaking lift. But having a cardio machine at your house, or maybe let's say you have an apartment with an apartment gym, that is the freaking sweet spot for sure, because there is no delay between waking up and actually just getting your cardio out of the way. I mean, what I was on a good kick of this for a little while when I was at my school apartment, but I'd prep basically a liter of water, any kind of like 0-calorie energy drink, and some kind of electrolyte mix. And as soon as I would wake up, instantly slam it and then jump straight to the bike. Like, I'm not even really totally all the way there awake yet, and I'm already pedaling. And then 30 minutes goes by like nothing. 30 minutes of cardio is kind of a trap of a statement, because how far away is your gym? You have to get in the car, you're going to talk to whoever's there, you're probably going to finish and then sit down for a minute, maybe you go to the bathroom, maybe you just whatever. I mean, 30 minutes of cardio can turn into 2 hours if you're a little more of a social butterfly. So that's one thing that I noticed helped me is, sure, I do get to kind of get some banter in and see who's all there, but if I got to get my cardio done and do whatever else later, having the bike at the house, that's a bonus. And I know you've got space for it, right? I'm talking, and it could be anything, It's not like there's a huge barrier to entry, apart from transport. But if your buddy has a truck, you can go on Craigslist right now and find any kind of recumbent bike, if not for $50 or less, just for free. There's one day where I was driving back from the gym over here, and somebody had put a cardio bike on the side of the road, just like dumped it, like, I don't want this thing, let's get rid of it. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was like a plant, because somebody knew that I drove past it when I would go to that gym, just for me to see it. But I mean, people are giving away cardio. So to not do it is simply a disservice to your own build. And especially now in a dieting context too. Getting leaner, I mean, it's at the end of the day, if you boil it all the way down to the basic core component, you can just limit your calories. Change nothing else. If all that you did was make sure that you ate in a calorie deficit every day and did no exercise, no anything, yeah, you'd gradually get leaner. But, I mean, for one, it'd be no fun. And also, I mean, don't you want to kind of keep yourself moving around and having a good metabolism? For me, at least, anything less than that 30 minutes a day, it's just not ideal. And I'm probably going to end up bumping it up to 30 minutes plus at least, well, actually, no, probably, at least like 15 minutes post-workout. I think when I was doing 2 hours a day, that was a bit too stressful, in the sense that it was just a lot of energy output, kind of fatiguing my legs from doing all the seated bike. I think an hour a day is probably the max sweet spot, especially if you split it up into 2 sessions, like bike, maybe post workout treadmill, something along those lines. And then the rest of it, in terms of building up your calorie deficit gap, that's where I'd say, okay, man, you just got to control yourself. Get a Quest bar, even though they're full of, actually not even though, Quest bars are full of a bunch of weird shit. I'm talking like a bunch of allulose and weird, like, chemically derived, maybe not chemically derived, what am I saying, but like very non-normal carb replacements. So I'm not saying you can't get away with throwing one in every so often, but I really wouldn't recommend it. I think the most of a dieting hack that you should be doing on the regular is at least maybe just some keto bread, where it's kind of a little bit extra fibrous, like it's got a bit more dietary fiber than normal. But even then, be wary, because if you're a company that's selling low carb bread, you're going to push the envelope of like just how many grams of fiber can you say is in here, and you can kind of get away with it, right? So a company's totally going to lie to you and say there's actually only 2 grams of carbs instead of maybe 7 or 8 or so. So that's where, if you want to make sure that you actually know what you're doing calorie counting wise, it's going to be in your best interest to stick to just slightly more basic foods. Like anything where it's essentially kind of pre-made or prepped, they can get away with a bit of a just variance of just how many calories are in this thing. It's like if somebody made homemade muffins, and they're gonna all vary in size, maybe they're not all perfectly mixed together. That's where, when I was getting towards the end of my dieting phase and I really had to kind of lock it in and make sure my intake was like real specific, then that's where I was doing much more just like canned tuna, leaner proteins. I'm talking tons of ground turkey, just rice cakes, like things like that, where there isn't any hidden calories. And if you're thinking about any kind of condiments, you got to be careful there too. This can turn into its own talk about how many calories are in freaking ketchup and mayonnaise, and should you get low fat, and it's a million different things to talk about dieting wise. And I've been bulking these last couple months, so I haven't really got anything out of it. So, or got any of those points out for a little while. So as I start getting a little more locked in, I'll make sure to share any extra particular dieting tips that come up. But I can say this with certainty: within only a few months span, I'm gonna be freaking veinier than what? Well, you get the gist. So I think nothing else to say, but I'll see you for back tomorrow.